Hello again. Let's take a few minutes to discuss my research project. Now, I'm writing to answer the question, did America have a founding theology? And if so, what did it look like? I'm building off of Mark David Hall's thesis that America had a Christian founding. Now, the question that comes to my mind is, if America had a Christian founding, what did its theology look like? Now, we know every person, and I think every nation has a theology of some kind. Even atheism is a form of theology. It's how you understand God. Um, but what did our founding theology look like? And naturally, my answer to the question is yes, America did have a founding theology. And this theology, what it looked like, was overwhelmingly reformed in its orientation. Now, while it was very much reformed, this wasn't exclusive. It wasn't exclusively so. There were other traditions that made important contributions as well to our understanding of God and ourselves, and to theology. And these were Baptist, Quaker, as well as Catholic theological traditions. Now, this paper is not meant to be exhaustive. An entire book could probably be written on this, and I expect there will be disagreements with my conclusions. However, my hope is really to begin an academic discussion or debate that explores these ideas further. Now, to get a sense for the prevailing theological thought of our founding, I examined some of the major writings of our founders, as well as our own founding documents. Now, while it's impossible to examine all of the writings of our founders, especially for a short paper like this, I chose three main documents. Now, there are others I looked at briefly, but three main documents that I looked at heavily. The first is John Adams' dissertation on canon and feudal law. The second is Thomas Paine's Common Sense. The third are the Federalist Papers, particularly Madison's Federalist 51. Now, I chose these because it shows some of the prevailing thought of different time periods within the Revolutionary era. Adams' dissertation was written in 1765, just as the Revolutionary era was kicking off. Common Sense was written just before independence was declared. It was also written to appeal to the majority of Americans at the time. And then the Federalist Papers were written after the war was over in the late 1780s. Now, as far as Reformed theology, you really can't throw an old copy of the Westminster Confession without hitting some aspect of it in the founders' writings or the founding documents. And I'll just give a few examples so as not to belabor the point. In his dissertation, Adams points to the Puritans as a model for good governance and claims that submitting to slavery is sacrilegious. This is a nod to resistance theology, which is an understanding of Christian resistance against tyrants, popularized by John Calvin, but especially by his successor, Theodore Beza. Paine also pulls from the idea of resistance theology when he claims that Britain has oppressed the American people, and they should therefore rebel. He holds up pre-monarchical Israel, with only God as king as the ideal state of government. And this draws heavily from the Puritan idea of covenant theology, as well as the idea of the godly republic, where a chosen people make a covenant with God to be his people. And we see this all throughout the Old Testament, but you see it especially in Puritan thinking as well, the best example being Winthrop's City on a Hill. Resistance theology can also be seen in the Declaration of Independence, when it claims that a government should be abolished when it becomes destructive to the rights of its people. It also emphasizes that the government exists for the people, not the other way around, which is another key aspect of resistance theology. Within the Constitution, we see an emphasis on the separation of powers and the system of checks and balances. Madison describes this as an effort to counteract ambition, that is, corruption and tyranny. Madison makes the famous quote in Federalist 51 that if men were angels, then no government would be necessary. Both of these points draw heavily from the Reformed understanding of sin as total depravity. Both of these points draw heavily from the Reformed, from total depravity, as in man is completely depraved, completely sinful. Now, there were certain radical Christian sects, as well as Enlightenment thinkers around this time, that believed they could create a utopia on earth, but as we can see, the Reformed Christians knew better, and it really is reflected in these writings. Now, that's not surprising, since Madison was a student of clergymen Presbyterian clergyman John Witherspoon during his time at Princeton. Now, while Reformed theology is a major part of our founding theology, it's not exclusively so. We know that the Baptists played a part in the American idea of no established church, or disestablishment. Both Madison and Jefferson were influenced by the plight of the Baptists. You can see this in Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists, as well as Madison's letter to his friend William Bradford. Of course, the idea of no established church was enshrined in the Constitution. Now, while the Baptists played a role also in the founding belief of freedom of religion, significant credit also really needs to go to the Quakers. It was the example set by William Penn's Pennsylvania that had significant influence here. According to Arlin, no other colony inspired the founders more in the area of religious liberty than Pennsylvania. Thomas Jefferson even called Pennsylvania the cradle of toleration and freedom in the Western world. Now, while Catholic theology is a definite part of our founding theology, its influence is more indirect than the Reformed Baptist or Quaker influence. The founding ideas of natural law, participatory government, and covenant between ruler and governed, all ideas explicitly described in both the Declaration and the Constitution, can be found in the writings of Thomas Aquinas. While it is unlikely that many of our founders read Aquinas, his ideas would have come down to them through writers such as John Locke or Richard Hooker. Now, this is a very brief overview of my research paper. And like I said, it's my hope to inspire further academic discussion in this area. I really think that the better we understand our founding theology, the better we can understand ourselves as Americans.